Miss Neliswa Nkani is here. We may admit her for the session. So this is a very important session with one of our international guests, a very renowned face internationally. I would request our students to really be attentive and keep asking questions. So Neliswa ma'am, can we see you please? Hello, so good to see you, Neliswa ma'am. Hi, welcome.
Thank you.
Our students have been eagerly waiting for you, and we would formally start the session in another 2 minutes. So before we start the session, I would like to take this opportunity to introduce our very special guest to our students and faculty members. A very warm welcome to Ms. Neliswa Nkani, our guest for this session, and welcome back students for today's session on gender inclusivity. Gender inclusivity means what? We all know by now, to be open to everyone and not limited to certain people. In the regard to gender, this means that services, establishments, schools, other practices, government agencies and institutions, everything has to have inclusion and representation regardless of gender, identity or expression. So to explore different dimensions of gender inclusion and address this issue, we are honored to have with us a truly inspiring personality who has lived and practiced gender inclusion in her life and work. Ms. Neliswa Nkani, dear students, is the name that resonates with how inspiring a woman can be and how she can achieve all what she plans to. A certified professional in marketing management, finance, and retail business management, Neliswa knows at least 8 international languages, having over 15 years of experience in destination tourism marketing. She has worked for organizations such as Vesgro for trade and investment agency, South African tourism, Cape Winelands District Municipality, among many more. Presently working as a hub head of Middle East, India, Southeast Asia, for South African tourism. Neliswa is someone who has always made it a point to be gender inclusive in her life and work. As a person who lived in South Africa and different other countries of the world, Neliswa's stories is truly inspiring from gender perspective, which we would definitely request her to share with our young women participants from different parts of India. Along with that, we would also love to hear from her as to how she has ensured that people she works with are truly represented and included at various forums. So let me stop here, and without any further delay, I cordially invite Ms. Neliswa Nkani to address our participants.
Thank you very, very much, and namaste, and thank you for inviting me. I'm currently in South Africa in the most gorgeous city, which is the capital of South Africa, Pretoria. And this is quite an auspicious occasion for us, for me, and actually quite humbling to be included and invited to your lecture. It's actually quite an honor. Thank you to you and to those who referred me. So South Africa is, you know, when I got this invite, I thought, what do we talk about? Because gender inclusivity is such a cliche, it's such a word we use, you know, and we use it when there's an atrocity that happens in the world or in our country. If a gay person gets beaten, or a woman gets beaten, or a child gets murdered, and we sometimes use it loosely. I'm going to give a quick brief on who I am. I was born in such poverty. My father was a petrol attendant. My mother was a cleaner. And my mother couldn't even speak English, to be actually truthful. My mother couldn't speak English. She could hear it, but she couldn't respond. At the age of 9, my mother died and my world came tumbling. And I was then forced to be, not forced, I found myself to be adopted by an amazing European family at a time when in South Africa, you were not allowed to be adopted by white people. Literally, it was illegal because of the system. And when I was raised in this family, I had to change my entire shift my entire paradigm from calling my new parents madam to being mom and dad. And it was quite a shift because we were raised in South Africa that black is inferior. Women are inferior. When my mother died, she couldn't buy, she didn't have a, what you call a passport. She couldn't get a passport. When my mother died, it was illegal for women to own houses. Houses were owned by men, and it was only to be registered by men. As time came by, I was raised in a family. My mother, new mom, was a professor of speech and drama, very articulate. My father was an American Swede, very liberating, very open. What they did, first and foremost, when they adopted me as a young woman, is they said, we are going to make sure that the people who raise, when we raise you, our help in the house is going to be help that come from the same clan, and what you would call in India, it's a clan. And the reason they did this is so that they could ground me culturally. Before we talk about gender, one of the things that I always say, if we don't know who we are, and we don't know where we come from, and we don't appreciate who we are, and we are not inclusive of our own state of emotion, and we are not acknowledging and conscious, nobody can include us as women, irrespective of your sex. If you don't know who you are, you don't know where you come from, are ashamed of where you come from, or intimidated by your past, you're going to continue to live in the darkness of your past. Nobody will include you. So my first 101 lesson in my new life as a woman was my parents said to me, as a young black woman who was being raised in a very articulate, fortunate environment, you got to understand where you come from. Because if you don't know where you come from, you can't move. So they brought people to me, to my life. And this is a rare story because not everybody gives us an opportunity. And the second thing they said to me was that when you get given by anybody, receive it as hard as it is, but make sure that you pay it forward. And as I grew up in a multi-racial dimensional. I'm a black young woman raised in a white environment. I'm in a society that I have to kind of transit so that I fit into a black society, that I can be included. When I'm in a white community, I have to be included. If I have what we call mulattoes or colored, I have to be included. But I had to learn to be inclusive of, I needed to find, how do I fit in without compromising who I am, the values that I stand for. And it's very hard when you're a youngster because you want to be accepted. It's the easiest thing that everybody wants. Everybody wants this. And my parents taught me from a young age, and I live by that. It is okay to be different. It is okay to do you. And as we grew up, and I come from an environment where race was everything. It was either you had or you didn't have. You were either black or white. In my country, white was superior, black was inferior. This is a process that took place 70 years ago. We had a system called apartheid. And that system said, white will be superior. And then it came into colored, which is a mixed race between black and white. And then it came to Indian, then it came to black. And this is where inclusivity or exclusivity or lack of inclusivity hit South Africa hard. And then it went a step down to say women must stay at home. Women must stay at home. And if you wanted to really push it, to go and say you are gay in South Africa, it was seen as a sin, unrighteousness, unholy. It was seen as dirty. Fast forward in my first job I learned was I was a tea-girl because I was looking for part-time work. But all my life, I grew up knowing there's something different about me. And I couldn't put it, I couldn't put couldn't nail it what it was. And as I grew older, trying to fit in my own biological family, trying to fit in with Muslim community, trying to fit in with black family, trying to fit in with white family, I realized that I need to find my inner core. I need to find my inner peace. I need to know my strength, and that I needed to stand strong as a person before a gender, before anything. And as I worked more and more, my experience, I started to see how women treat women, how men treat women, how men treat other men. And I also started to see the race and gender. And I give you an example in South Africa. We have something in South Africa called the pink market. It's LGBT. That market, the respect and the support they give of each other is incredible. And then you talk about inclusivity, how women have to lift themselves and how women need to support themselves. Sometime in life I learned the most harsh society to women can be women. The scarring of a woman to another woman, at times it's not a visible scar. And yet it's a scar that can undress your soul and your being for years and generations to come. And therefore I took it that I will, by all means, empower women. I will also, because I'm a mother to a son, if I want my son to be a good man, I have to be the mother that is going to make sure he emulates or he depicts what it takes to treat a woman. Because I always say to him, if you're going to treat your girlfriend or your wife, picture me. How would you want me to be treated by any other male or any other gender? And his response was, how do other genders, how do other females treat each other? So on this gender journey, I learned that we spend a lot of time trying to mold women to be better women. Fabulous. But I realized I am now a mother to a son. And how would I want him to treat a person, a woman? And we come from a very conservative country where at the age of 17, I had to teach him what it is to be accepting for another gender, like gay, lesbians. Because at the core of all who we are, there's one thing we share. It's a liquid, it's called blood. The second one is a heart, and it beats. Those two things bind us, no matter what color you are, what class you are, what race you are, what religion you are. We share a similar blood, we share a heartbeat. Secondly, our maker and our creator made sure that our heart and our mind is hidden. What does this mean? It means you can never, ever see what the other person thinks of you. You can never, ever, but you can only hope that they think good. Why am I saying this? I say to my team in India, there's one word I never use when I talk collective in gender. I never use I use we. Because we have a saying in Africa, umtu ngumtu ngabantu. We are who we are because of humans and because of others. And therefore, when we talk about gender inclusivity, for me, no matter where you are sitting in the world, you need to ask yourself, am I the best that I can be to somebody? What is my impact to the person next to me, behind me? What am I leaving with that person? When I walk away or I turn back and they see my back, when they see my back, can they see my soul and my heart? Because without goodness, without kindness, without humanity, there is no starting point for inclusivity. And it's irrespective of your gender and your creed. We owe it to ourselves, particularly the young students. We owe it to start saying, are you okay? No matter what your gender is, no matter what your race is. Because if you're not okay, I'm not okay. There is no room to celebrate mediocrity if we are prejudiced and if we are racist and if we suffer from a superiority complex. My approach in life has always been about a ladder. If you take a ladder like you see my backdrop or those windows, there's no use of me to be on top and somebody's at the bottom. I've got to constantly ask, where are we at emotionally? Where are we at mentally? And gender inclusivity is not just about sex, ladies and gentlemen. it attaches an emotion. How can we do better to each other? Because the next generation, and I think that's the generation that's sitting here, you do not see race. You cannot afford to see race. Sexism has no place in it. And I know we come from cultures where we are told it is a sin to be gay. It is a sin to aspire to be rich. It is a sin to be even ambitious. It is a sin to love somebody who is of the same sex. Women are destined to be servants. It cannot be in your generation. You cannot witness it. You cannot perpetuate it. You cannot okay it. We've got to stand up. And the only way we can stand up is by being conscious of what we do unto others. Because you have to lead your parents. You are the next generation, because your generation behind you is going to ask you, how did you pivot? How did you change India? How did you change your molecule family? And it's by doing small things, not radical things. Opening up the mind and opening up the heart. You can open your heart to another person, irrespective of their gender, but being conscious that we are, in a way, molded differently. But our fundamentals and the principles of goodness and the Ubuntu of humanity are the same. So for me as a South African, how do I assist? I'll give you a very simple example of what I did in India. Upon arrival in India, we had a female staff of about 4, 1 male. 2 gentlemen who were cleaners. One was he did the tea and the coffee. One was a mailman. And where we come from in my country, equality is something that we fought very hard for through many, many legends like Nelson Mandela, Thabo Mbeki, Govan Mbeki, Walter Sisulu, Winnie Mandela, Solomon Mahlangu, youngsters up to age. And the first thing I depicted in my company, which was not female driven, I realized the 2 gentlemen who were cleaning the toilet and who were male people, they were not, firstly, when they were called, they would use the bell. And this offended me. It shocked me to say, in this day, how do you treat the person who looks after your well-being by calling them out with a bell? I let this go on for 3 months, 4 months, because I needed to understand the concept and where it comes from. 4 months, 5th month, I called them and I said to them, why do you not eat with us? When we as management, we eat, you eat on your own, and you don't eat with us. And when we have Friday pizzas or Friday staff meetings, they're not in the meeting. And they said, no. And they would use this word, no, madam. And I would like, this is something for me shocking, because I also need to understand their culture and the history. Madam for us in South Africa is associated with superiority, colonialism, and what we call apartheid. So the first step was, can you please call me Neliswa? That's my first stage of inclusivity. They're highly uneducated. They can speak English, very minimal. My second step was, on Fridays, they would be part of our lunch team. Not us serving them. They must serve themselves, because they have a right to be amongst us, to be present, because they have a role they play for us, irrespective of how small it is. Opening the mail, going to the mail, going to buy me pizza, going to get stuff and delivering courier, cleaning the toilet. It's irrespective of what the job you are. What is important is that you're a human being and you should stand in stature and in good standing with us. So we broke that wall. 2 males. The third one, I stopped the bell syndrome. I said, any manager that calls any other male in my office or any other person with a bell, we have to do 1 or 2 things. We'll all be called by bells, or we call each other by names. Now remember, this could be a norm in India where the cleaner is called by a bell. And the cleaner never sits with the people who eat. In my world, it's abnormal, because equality does not have a variation. The equal sign that you see when you press it or you write it, it's equal. If you look at the equal sign on your computer, it's 2 lines. They're exactly the same length. There's no variation of an equal sign. Otherwise, it's not an equal sign. Today, Nilesh has a driving license. He's been at my company for 14 years, never driven a license. What is the moral of the story? Give to those who deserve. My motto in life, give to life and life will give to you. Stand tall. Do the unthinkable when it comes to equality. Own it, live it. Share your world, share your soul, and be blind to prejudice. In that manner, in that way, I mean, do not bring it into your world. It has no room. We cannot afford to see young women being told that they are inferior. We cannot have men believe because they are gay, they are inferior. The blood, the heart beats. In India, we are all Indian, and we stand for the Indian nation and the morals of being Indian and the ethics. And therefore, we cannot afford as a country, we cannot afford as a society to be divided because we look and seem to see things differently. So for me, inclusivity means the betterment of your own being, your soul, your heart. And I always say, if you were to define the war, what gender would it be? It doesn't have a gender, but yet it's got its up and downs. And we continue to climb those up and downs equally, and we come outstanding as better people. I hope this doctor gives you some insight. What are the words of parting? Stay true to yourself as a youth. Peer review. Be an eagle. An eagle operates on a very highly spiritual. They don't operate from here, they operate from here. See things, elevate yourself. And when you see something wrong, or somebody's doing something wrong, don't step back and say, check that person out, but it's in the way you do it. And say, I don't understand why you would think this person is different, or why do you act differently? Eagles fly high. They don't prey on meek. They elevate themselves. They do not prey on the meek. They go into storms because they're ready to challenge themselves. Challenge each one of yourselves to be better when it comes to matters of inclusivity. In our country, we have young girls who do not go to school for days because they cannot afford to buy sanitary towels. In our country, a young child is killed every minute. They go missing. In our country, we've got trafficking. In our country, we've got the same challenges as poverty. We've got childhood families that are led by 12-year-olds. It is not a normality. How do you change it? Education, education, putting in those hours, because it's the only thing that can open your heart and your mind, and paying it forward. Don't receive for the sake of receiving. Receive to give. Share your knowledge, share your hearts, but most important, peer review. Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you so much, Neliswa, for such a wonderful and inspiring session. And I'm sure that it is what you said, that it is important to be conscious of our own understanding and be ready to challenge our own selves. Then only we can push such stereotypes behind. So we do have questions. Can we take some? Can we take some questions from the students? Who would want to come first? Students may please raise hand. Okay, so Nandini, can you hear us? Would you like to ask a question, please? I know it has been a very, very emotional moment for all of us to hear Neliswa out, and we can absolutely understand, people are just self-speculating among themselves. And we may have a question from Akriti first.
It's okay. I see.
Yeah. So there's one question where Anjali wants to ask you the stereotypes which we face as a generation today in a digital age. How do we overcome that?
So for me, Anjali, the digital world does not have, it has an impact in emotion. It doesn't have emotion. And I'll say it again, if you can be comfortable with where you come from, nobody can break who you are. One of the greatest things about the internet is that it's an oversupply of information. I always say to companies, the greatest competitor in the world today, when you take Coca-Cola and you say Pepsi, who's your biggest competitor? I always say the internet. The digital age, we need to be careful of how we filter the information because not everything is true. My belief in life about stereotyping is that for me to make a judgment on you, I need to experience you. I can only judge you from having experienced you emotionally because everything else can be a facade. Try not to make judgments. Now we're talking about digital age. My response would be, you've got to always flip the coin. For every positive, there's a negative. For every negative, there's a positive. And when you are faced with the dilemma of not being able to decide, step back. You do not need to make a decision on anything. It's okay to be indifferent, but stand for good. In your digital age, you get a lot of information, oversubscribed. And let me also tell you, the digital age is almost like media. The more sensational it is, the juicier it is. The more gruesome it is, the more it sells. Show me media or digital spaces where good sells. We've become so complacent that we do not find good stories and we are so attracted to sensationalism. So how do we avoid the stereotyping? Step back if you can't make a decision. Nobody can force you to make a decision you don't want on anybody. And put yourself in that step to say, if it was me in that digital space being stereotyped, how would I want to be judged? Close your eyes, take a moment. And nobody can force you to make a judgment just because it's a digital platform. The whole point, it's like a story. When you read a Daniel Steele book or Mahatma Gandhi book, he never made you make decisions. He made you reach down deep into your heart to make decisions. So digital platform, it can be sensational, but we also need to do it in moderation. You will know when something is right and wrong. Yes, what? I'm so sorry, I don't have my glasses. I saw.
May I read it? May I
yes,
read
ma'am. Yes, please.
Or Ruchika,
yes,
you would want to unmute yourself and ask question directly? Okay, so Ruchika, can you hear us? Oh, okay, so Ruchika's mic is not working. I would read it out for everyone. It was a very inspiring session, ma'am. I'd like to ask, what is and should be the desired role of international institutions for intersectional discrimination like racial gender discrimination?
So last week I got asked a question about people who invented, like the greatest inventors around the world or architectures of systems. And I'm taking the long road to answer this question. And I said to a colleague, it was in a room of 200 people. And I said to them, the people who invented racial discrimination we need to applaud them. And I say this with malice, because if you can, and the person who invented, or the one who created what we call apartheid, he was born in the Netherlands, he came to South Africa, and in 1948, he decided that blacks were from now on treated separately and inferiorly, as would be Indians, put on a different pedestals, and that whites will be superior and all other races. And I said this because I just believe if a human being is able to influence human beings 70 years later about racial divide, is it possible that we've given too much power to institutions to deconstruct racism? My answer is yes. No organization, no legal court, no institution can break down racism. The only people who can do it is yourself and myself. Because racism is a system that breeds on fear and inferiority and meek people. If I was able to be raised in a very black family and transit into a white family, and have a sister that is white, and a brother that is Muslim, and a son that is a mixed breed, and be a black woman who is very conscious that racism is good, I don't need it. I don't need a book to read it. I don't need an institution. I need a conscience that says, I am the best that I can be under the circumstances. So yes, we've got institutions that talk about race relations, but I sometimes think we give too much power to academics than to our own souls and our own minds and our own independence. It's here. When I came into India, the first thing I was told that I'm not going to make it in India because I'm a black woman. And I was told within India by a person who was in India. And guess what? I've never felt racial discrimination in India. Maybe because of the position that I hold, I didn't have to go for a 101 course in India. I'm more prone to get it in my own country than in India. Do we have issues of race in the world? Absolutely. Where does it come from? In the heart and in the mind. Positive reinforcement of negativity can be eliminated with positive reinforcement. I don't know if I've answered your question. And same as gender. Same as gender. We're not born to hate. No child in India or in South Africa goes to an institution to learn racism. We are indoctrinated in it because our forefathers know no better, and it's a system. We need to change the conversations about gender and about race within our own ambits and in our own spheres. We can give stories to be captured about race and gender discrimination, but they cannot be our Bible because we are evolving as a society. What was racism 48 years ago and what it is today is different. There is far more discrimination economically that implicates and that impacts various genders. We could go and say that the pink dollar is so powerful economically because the gay and lesbian market is so liquid and they're discriminated because of their sexuality. We can script it, but in 3 years' time, in 3 months' time, it will change. The change needs to come within our own selves and not institutions, in my view, at 50 years old again. Yes. Another question.
We have Paridhi. Paridhi, you've been raising hands for long.
I can't hear.
Yes, Paridhi. Can you switch on your camera as well? It will be good to see you.
Good evening, ma'am.
Neliswa, your mic is muted, so you can unmute it. Paridhi,
I can hear very faintly.
Paridhi, go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. Good evening, ma'am. Thank you so much for your lecture today. My question for you is regarding the fact that many cultures cage both men and women in certain norms and roles. So, do you think this issue is more of cultural disparity or gender inequality?
As an African woman raised for my first 9 years, I was raised as a young black girl that I have to learn at 8 years old, I needed to learn to cook. So that was the black culture, black race. I walk into a white family to be raised, and black women are they are maids. That's a white culture. That's a norm. I wake up and I'm in my early 50s. I have a 27-year-old son who cooks for himself, irons for himself, doesn't expect his mother. I think it's a combination, but I think also in it is education. Cultures evolve. What we used to do 50 years ago, and we look at what we did now in post-COVID, definitely there's had to be an impact and a shift in paradigm. Yes, depending where you are in the world, in South Africa, rural South Africa, women are expected to cook. But nowhere did we ever foresee post-1994, our first ever democratic election, we would have young girls leading families because mother and father and brother and sisters have died of AIDS. Is that a cultural agenda? Is that an accountability or forced circumstances? I think it's a combination of both. Am I a culturalist? Absolutely. Do I perform African black rituals? Absolutely. Do I know why I perform them? Yes, and I've had to change my shift. Am I religious? Absolutely. So it's a combination of culture. It's a combination of gender. It's also a combination of we must never stop questioning why we do things. Because sometimes we do things because it was done. And we must always ask, is it still relevant? If I don't do it, does it take away? I also add gender, culture, and spirituality. You can't separate those. Those three can never be separated. In my life. Because culture comes with spirituality. And in spirituality, am I forced to cook because I'm a black woman for my brothers? It's a choice that I make to give to people of what I am from a gender perspective. But I will never put myself out there and say I'm doing it because I'm a woman. I'm a human being before I'm a woman. I'm an African before I say I'm a woman. Am I proud? I'm a very strong woman, maybe too strong. And I'll never sacrifice what my strength is to make other people fit. But I will be tolerant and be conscious of my presence in other people, because lack of that consciousness is to the detriment of my own growth and my own surroundings. And it could impede my engagement on a far higher spirituality. I hope I've answered you, my darling.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much.
So we have Reet next who wants to waiting to ask question. Reet, can you go ahead?
I can't hear. There's a very solo.
Yes, Suchi ma'am, your mic is probably, I mean, it's not working properly because your voice is very low.
Can you hear me now?
It's still very low, ma'am.
I don't know what happened, but maybe you can go ahead with your question.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Good evening, ma'am. Neliswa ma'am, I'm Reet and I'm a student of Political Science Honors, third year, Delhi University. And my question to you is that I've read about a concept of female genital mutilation, and it is very prevalent in South African countries, in African countries. And with respect to that, my question is, you focus a lot on education, and that I've also seen a lot of videos where African people, they have made a lot of efforts to educate people about the negatives and about the fatal effects of female genital mutilation, yet those practices are still prevalent, and that there is still a section of society in Africa which feels that to uphold this system is to uphold the cultural values. So I do not really understand how to deal with these people, because I believe that the concepts like gender equality, gender justice, inclusiveness, they are all futile, and they're only good on paper if the change is not reached out to the ground level, which is these people, the people who actually practice these things. So how do you suggest we deal with such elements of society?
In Africa, Africa has got 54 states. And I'm going to give you an example for my family. I come from a very multiracial family. I have a son. After his last year at school, high school, he had to go into what we call the passage of manhood, and he got circumcised, right? And it was his choice to do it. And the circumcision comes with no anesthetics. And he was away from my home for about 3 months. But before he left, I had to ask him, why did he want to do it? And he put his reasons. Nothing I could have done. I could have said no, but I also know that if I had said no, the society, it would have broken him, because it's got so much. That's from a South African perspective. Education has got such an important role, but we also need to find a balance. What is normal in India, I cannot come and discriminate. Until we understand where do these customs emanate from, it is easier for us to then make a judgment. I am an African woman. I've heard about young girls who get circumcised. We have a culture in South Africa where young girls are inspected for their virginity. Now, a lot of people would say that is degrading, where our previous president would go and make sure that they do this virgin, they call it a reed dance. Young girls come out with no top, they walk around and they're inspected and they're seen still as virgins. And those young girls are done, it's done with pride. They love it because it's their holiness, it's their sanctuary. They're very proud. When we go further up into Africa, the world, particularly the West, will say this is an atrocious behavior. It's the exceptions to say this must stop because it is not fair, it's unjust. I can't make a statement on it because I don't know where it comes from. And I can't even make a judgment.
So sorry to interrupt you, ma'am. Your voice
I
is
know
breaking.
in KwaZulu-Natal, which is in my country, I know in my son's life and in our family. Yes. I know in my country, when my son went, Europeans looked down and to say, why would you go and have your child circumcised in the bush when there's a doctor? And our stand is, we are African, and there's certain customs that we will not compromise on. Gender circumcision, particularly girls, I can't make a judgment on it. And people will ask me, do you think it's wrong? I said, no, I can't make a judgment on it because I have not heard the narrative from those who are recipients of it. My narrative is scripted according to the Western narrative. And I refuse to be part of those who read for the sake of reading. I can't make a judgment on it. Because as an African, I need to get to the grip of why it is done. And until I understand it, I'm not able to answer you. How do you respond to it? It's the one answer I can say to you. I do not have an answer for you. But when we do it in our culture, when my son goes and be circumcised by a gentleman without anesthetics, and he comes back and he feels that he's a better person, that he hasn't lost any of all the things that I have taught him, I'm okay with it. But I suppose I would not be okay with it if he came back and he had not made it. So I'm talking from a place of privilege that we've done, and as Muslims do circumcision to a baby, and the baby does not have a choice, but it's done because it's their religion. I'm not sure what the rest of Africa does it for. And that is why I'm impeded to give you a far more transparent answer.
I totally got your point, ma'am. But then again, my question would be, like you said, when somebody asks you if the practice is wrong, you say you have no answer. But then, ma'am, as far as my knowledge is concerned, and I believe and I accept that my knowledge is very restricted at the age of 20. But still, ma'am, as far as my knowledge is concerned and as far as the videos that I've watched, I can only say that the way it is practiced and the instruments with which they practice it, I think it's vehemently wrong. So do you have to do you have anything to say on that?
So these are cultures that have been done many moons before you and I were born. We're in a time of a completely different time zone. So generationally, from your perception, it could be very wrong. If you remember, maybe you don't know, years ago, women gave birth without doctors. And the instruments that were used 20, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, there were instruments were very wrong. Women gave birth at home. Times have changed. But whose time has changed? What has poverty done to those people to do those today? Is it right? I cannot make that answer. My son was circumcised without anesthetics, and we stood by it and we believed it. And the instrument that was used is the same instrument that was used on my brother, who was 50, 60, the same instrument that my dad was used. My son is an international relations honor student in the top African university today. And if you were to ask him why he went through it, he will say to me, because it was who I am. Certain things define us, no matter how small, how dangerous. It is our duty to say, can we live through those people's eyes? Or are we judging them because we are in a better standing or perceived to be in a better place? I could watch a video of a woman giving birth without having to be given any sterilizing or any anesthetics. Does it give me the right to say it is wrong in today's world? What is that woman's environment? What is that woman's departure point? What does she have at her disposal? Are we making a fair judgment? Or are we judging because we are sitting in a higher place, because we are in a better position, or we think we are? I gave birth to my son 27 years ago. I didn't have a C-section or an epidural. Today you have a birth and it's got no epidural. You're saying it is not good. Your heart must guide you. What you see and your heart, and you must also have context. What's the context? Without context, we can't make judgment, because we're no better from those who are prejudiced. Sometimes it looks wrong and it could be wrong. But what's the context? Why are people doing it that way? Remember, Africa is one of also the most richest continents in the world, but it's got the most disparities and one of the poorest societies. Is it African governments? Is it cultures? Is it lack of education? By seeing something, for me, sometimes I step away and I think, how is it possible that somebody can be circumcised without an anesthetic and they're standing and they're educated? Is it will? Is it conviction? Is it faith, culture, and belief? And who's narrating the video?
Thank you, ma'am.
I'm not giving you an easy answer.
Yes, that is certainly not an easy answer, but then I definitely understand your viewpoint.
So we have Ramita next. Ramita, can you please unmute yourself quickly? We have very less time now, and Neliswa also has to go for her other engagement. So maybe just take. Ramita is not able to unmute. Can technical team ask her to unmute, please?
Ma'am, should I read out Ramita's question?
Yes. Anjali, you can read out Ramita's question.
Okay, so Neliswa ma'am, one of the students has asked, Ramita's asked, how do you connect spirituality with success with your higher purpose? Ma'am, you'll have to unmute yourself. Neliswa, ma'am.
I think, I don't want to say I am a very religious person, but I believe that there is goodness. I believe that there's a God in any form. I believe that God gives to you what you give to life. I also do believe that sometimes God or the Almighty or the spiritual power that I believe in sometimes displaces you to test your endurance and your faith and your conviction. I believe in goodness in its entirety. I also do choose to be good. I choose to surround myself with goodness. In choosing to do it, I also believe that I've got to pay my dues. I work hard. I'm goal orientated. I'm always seeking the next success. Can I define it? No. Sometimes you've got to let your higher spirit guide you. Sometimes you've got to listen to life. You've got to fall and you've got to knock yourself, because through that knock and that rise again is what's going to define success. My interconnectivity and my balance, I pray. I pray, and I don't pray just to ask. I pray to be grateful. I pray to be thankful. I sometimes pray to just pray for others. Just say thank you, Lord. Thank you for making me the person I am, giving me what I have. But I also pray and say, dear God, give those students that are sitting in this platform the opportunity to rise and to be elevated and be better people. And sometimes I pray for those that are unseen. I have no idea who they are. And in that, it gives me a sense of balance and a sense of comfort. Because if we are not thankful and we're not grateful and we're not conscious and we're not giving of ourselves the best, then we are worthy of nothing. Also choose to live by truth. You cannot confine it, you cannot restrict it. Best that you can be. It's seamless. I cannot be where I am today without prayer, spiritual connectivity, and also sacrifice, but also loss. It is also okay to lose. It's okay to be pained. It is okay to be in pain, as long as you do not dwell in pain and in a dark cloud, because there's a reason the sun shines. Darkness always vanishes. The light always shines. That's my mottos in life. And it goes to, again, I'll say it again, Umtu ngumtu ngabantu. I am who I am because of others. I hope that answers you.
Yes, I'm sure it does.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for your insight.
And we have another one, not many questions, many more questions, because I know we have a paucity of time. But Nandini, would you like to unmute yourself and ask a quick question?
Good evening, ma'am. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Hey.
Hello, ma'am. Thank you for this
Hello.
insightful talk. My question pertains to the fact that do you think that by just equitable representation and smashing stereotypes, we can achieve a better and inclusive social sphere?
Can you repeat that question for me? Sorry.
Ma'am, my question is that just by like creating a more equitable representation and by smashing stereotypes and prejudices, we can create a better inclusive social sphere, not just for like in terms of gender, but in a holistic sense.
You know, they say we are born equal. I always make this analogy. We are born equal, we die equal. We come into this world with nothing and we leave with nothing. and attempt to live our lives to the best of our ability. Equality is defined or can be defined differently by different people. If we look at spirituality and we talk about equality, we are born differently. We are born in different races, but we are born equally. What you do with your time to attain equality is what will count. But I know we will never be gifted with the same things. It's what we do with the gifts that we have acquired and been given. But do we breathe the same air? Is it equally the same? My answer is going to be no. Your air and my air is different. The air in India is not as pure as the air in South Africa. Does that give me a better chance in life or not? I don't know. How do we make ourselves more equal? I think we owe it to ourselves to be more emotionally equal. Make ourselves emotionally available equally. Give education equal opportunity. But it's all controlled by humans, isn't it? Your equality or your definition of equality will be defined by yourself, your departure point and your background, as would be mine. Can we have an equal society? Yes, but it has to be defined what it is we call equality. It can never be in a vacuum or in obscure or ambiguous, because what you define as equality and what I define equality might be two different things because we come from different cultures, different countries. But should girls have the same rights as boys? Absolutely. Same opportunity? Absolutely. Should gay people, lesbian people be given the same equal rights as young girls, straight or queer or transgender? Absolutely. You see, the thing about equality, it's what we do about the opportunity. For us to totally receive equality and realize it, it's what do we do with the opportunities? Are we given the same opportunity? But because of economic factors and deconstruct, I don't think so. But can we be equal? Can we see things equally? No. A hungry man and a full man will never see the world in the same way. The same as a hungry lion and a full lion. A lion that is deprived will always be angry, agitated, and violent. A lion that will be fed will be tame, once in a while, agitated. It's the same as human beings. We always aspire for more. We always aspire to get more. And some of us are given less and we start off with less. But it's not how we start, it's how we finish. And when we finish, what do we do with the abundance that we have? So from an equality perspective, it needs to be deconstructed and unpacked. Because I think we use the word equality and inclusivity very loosely. It's got a passion to it, it's got an academic to it. I think it doesn't have a deconstruct to say, if you and I were born on the same day, different countries, what would your departure point be and what would be mine? What would be the resources availed to you and what would be mine? Because I'm born into wealth, does it make me prone to be more successful? My answer will be, I don't know, because our spirituality, our giver and our creator can only define where we are going to be going. And I don't know if I'm answering you.
No, ma'am, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Nandini. And before we end the session, Vidhi has been really requesting us to read out her question because she's not able to connect to her audio. Anjali, would you please do the needful and
Sure,
read
ma'am.
Vidhi's question? Yeah.
So Neliswa ma'am, Vidhi has a question. Ma'am, as you said, you worked in India and shared your experience. It will be insightfully to know that what our generation can do about some wrong practices which we might have ignored as simply being part of society. Also, what is one thing or characteristic of practice you like or think we should learn from India? Ma'am, please unmute yourself.
Let me tell you what I love about India. Your humility. your humility. In India, you have, and the absolute disparity of not having, your humility. No one can take away from Indian community, and your sense of family. In the midst of having nothing, there is contentness. And those who have less are far more richer spiritually than those who have in abundance. That's what I've learned. You can see it, right? I think, what can we change in India? I think the role of how do we interact? How do I look at Mary, the lady who cleans my house? Can I do more for her and her children? As a young generation, the lady who comes and cleans for you, cooks for you, how do you address her? What's her impact in your life? The lady who does the tea in the office, the security guard, the guy who's in the rickshaw, what are you imparting to them? What are you sharing of yourself with them? And those people are the people who have nothing. They are perceived to have nothing because they are perceived to be of lower class economically. I have a thing that your generation has a responsibility to teach me. I always tell my son, keep me real. My son will never greet the cleaner by name, calls her auntie. Why? Because she's somebody's mother. And if it's the gardener, it's uncle, because it's somebody's father. Never would we look down on those who service us because they have less job, a far more junior job, or because they are uneducated, or they can't speak English. You don't need to be speaking English to be good in life. My son came from Japan a few months ago, and he said, you know, one thing about Japan that differs from South Africa. Japan lives for Japan. They are proud to be Japanese. They couldn't give a toot that they don't speak English because they strive and excel in Japanese. And we're very class driven. The maid is not as good as your mom because you don't see as your mom, but she's the lady that keeps the house. The cook is not as good as your mom, but she's the person that feeds your soul. That when you go to bed and you rub your tummy and you've had okra, you think that was a bloody good okra. But when we have to share our heart with her, we say she's different. So what would I ask you to do differently as a generation? Bring your mother's world and those who service your families, find the middle ground. Depict a different story in how we treat those who have less than us. Extend yourself. When you go to bed, ask if, did I share enough? Who could I have given more to? And I'm not talking about jewels or money. Share your heart and respect those that are around you. Everybody. My mother, before she died, my biological mother used to say, everybody is looking to be acknowledged. And the acknowledgement comes with hello, goodbye, please, thank you, my pleasure. The simplest of things can really make one whole. And in inclusivity, it should not just be about gender. It should be about humanity. If we are humane and we are acknowledging and conscious of each other and our surroundings, the inclusivity from a gender and a race things and a class, it becomes easier. Because I am darker does not make me inferior. Because you are lighter does not make you superior. We are equal in the eyes of our Maker. Therefore, for you, bring the two generations together, because we're not going to always be in the position to have. Can you imagine being unfortunate to lose everything? Would you cope? And how would you want those who have treat you? So the only thing I always ask my son is to say, Toba, humble yourself. Toba, 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 humble yourself to all those you come across in life. That's the one thing I would ask you to do.
Absolutely. And there couldn't have been a better way to close this session. Humble yourself is the message. And Neliswa, thank you so much. And your each word would definitely resonate in our minds when we come out of this session. And I hope all our participants will come out of this session being more emotionally equal, more emotionally available, making things like education, trying to make these things available for everyone, being more humane. And definitely a very important point is looking things from their departure points and background, which is very important. And definitely equality and inclusivity have a passion and academic stance in them. These are few of the many takeaways which we have from this session, and we are truly honored to have you here. I extend a heartfelt thanks to Ms. Neliswa Nkani from Forum for Democracy and Mata Sundari College, Delhi University, for such an informative and such an emotional session like that made all of us think through our own selves. And it would be an absolute honor to have you for our closing ceremony as a chief guest as well. So we are going to see you. We are not, as yet, we are not over with your knowledge, and we really want you to share your knowledge and experience in our closing ceremony as well. So we look forward to have you there as well. And from the side of students and the faculty members and the members of Forum for Democracy and Mata Sundari College, we are very thankful to you. Thanks for accepting our request and join us. You were able to join us from South Africa. That's a very big thing from your busy schedule. And we do look forward to have you for our closing. Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much. Again, I am humbled. And to those who are standing and sitting and listening, my parting words is be the best you can be. Bring your best. Bring your best and be present and be conscious and step aside from fear. No matter what your gender, what your race is, step aside, because fear is nothing but the unknown. And do your best. Do your best. And make sure that you open doors for those who are behind you. That's all we can do. Thank you. Stay blessed, stay favored. May the Almighty be with your families. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Neliswa. Thank you very much. Thank you.